Skyblock is an MMORPG with many contents to grind for and to max out either passively for fun or competitively to be the first to achieve the impossible. Dashwick with the first Kata 50, Lindman with the first 55 skill average, and Alma with his first 60 skill average, Ufupuffer with the first 100 mil Revenant XP, and SGB_VN with the first 2 billion mining XP, or even more. We don't know yet because he has his API off. These players have achieved something seemingly impossible and yet they did, and with this a lot of people have followed suit and have reached the same goal at a slower pace, which led to many races, to many goals, maxing out a certain stat or task, which some of them can't even be publicly displayed without the consent to the API system, like the Bestiaria, Heart of the Mountain, collections, network for money, mental illness, which is why making determine the best Skyblock player is near impossible. For example, a 40 skill average player with Catacomb 50 and a 55 skill average player with Catacomb 45. Who is the better player then? It gets really complicated because you can argue that skill average is about the mindless grinding, inferior to Catacombs. But if you flip the perspective, you can also argue that Catacomb is not about actual grinding, it's all about the money, finding the right people to run with, therefore inferior compared to the actual grind, that is skills. But despite this, there has been an attempt to gauge how good a Skyblock player is. Introducing Lappy Sheep weight calculation, the first of its kind and started since July or August of 2020 by Lily, otherwise known in-game as Lappy Sheep. In her words, quote, Legit or Matthew, who was a ex-guild master of Absolute Unit, or as it was called back then, Turbo Brewing, was talking about wanting to balance player who had either really good Slayer XP or really good skills, so it began. This weight system is created to gauge how good a Skyblock player is by taking skills, slayers, catacombs, network, minion slot, dungeon floor completions, and many more stats, and output the number, that is the weight number. Although there's actually two separate systems, one for individual players that take into account more stuff like minion slot, pet, net worth, and money, which can be accessed through the True Sheepy bot, which you could invite to your personal server by joining Skyblock weight calculation server by Lily herself and apply for the bot. And the second system is guild weight. Since guild weight has to be measured in bulk because there's many people on the guild, this system cut out minions weight, pet weight, and bank and net worth weight for ease of calculation. But all these weight calculations sounds really fancy, but at the start, this system was not publicly available and required to join her Discord server to use the bot, or ask her for an invite. But after interest were shown for her project, she has loosened up a bit and made it more public, which led to the weight system being open source, and bots are now more publicly available and also being included in at the SBE Skyblock Extra mod. If you do /weight with the IGN, this system is gonna use the Lappy weight system, although the guild weight instead of the individual weight. But before Lappy Sheep was more publicly available, another member at Trouble Brewing had created a new weight system, Snitter weight calculation by Snitter. And after it was being created, a website was built to support player stat tracking for the past month and guild ranking with many more features added to the website. With this ease of access, Snitter website later became the most used website to stat track your progress and even featured on the Skycrypt website, which is a continuation of the Skylimo. Skycrypt is also the best Skyblock website to view your stats, but compared to Snitter, it looks more fancy and features more stat. But Snitter has one big difference. Stats that are shown on the website are being tracked. But the catch is, it's only available to guild members that are in the guild and has applied for Snitter to track stat, with this requirement at the time of the recording. With this ease of access, the history to look up your stats, to see the progression, a very clean website to track your guild stats and to rank your guild, Snitter became the most used website to view your weight and other stats, and as used by many competitive guilds after its creation. But if we cut out the accessibility on the Snitter side, what makes one more different than the other? I privately messaged Snitter and Lappy Sheep, and they has given me a rundown of how the system works, which is really appreciated because it gives me an insight to the weight system that I have never known before. But the detail in these interviews are really boring for most people, so I've summed it up to a few paragraphs. First, Overflow skill XP, Slayer XP, Catacomb XP is considered a lot less for weight on the Lappy Sheep system because it doesn't affect or improve the gameplay in Lily's opinion, apart from the bragging right. Second, Slayer is considered a lot less on Lappy Sheep because Slayer exponentially gives more XP, therefore the less weight it gets. But Revenant and Tarantula being infinitely tradable with Derpy or Technoblade Mayor, making it so much faster. Therefore, it gives exponentially less weight the more XP you have. but the slowdown on the weight is calculated differently for each layer. Like how Revenant slow down a bit faster because of how easy it is. And let's say a hard Slayer like Void Golem. And also because going overboard with Slayer XP doesn't reward you with anything yet, so it shouldn't affect the gameplay that much in her words. 3. Lappy Sheep Dungeon Weight is a combination of floor completion and Catacomb XP and class XP, but Snither only counts dungeon class level and Catacomb XP. The reason for floor completions to be added to the calculation is to reward players who have completed the runs, instead of players who just do XP runs where completion is not being rewarded. Even with the floor completions being added, it still has little impact on weight, especially on lower floors. For example, 1000 floor 1 is worth around 31 weight, and 2000 is worth around 40.3 weight, and 50,000 for ones is worth around 89 weight. Therefore, it's not that needed unless you are mentally deranged and you want to max everything out. 4th point. Minion slot, net worth, and pets are taken into account in Lappy Sheep weight, but Snither doesn't do that. So instead of looking into the math of the weight calculation, which is way out of scope for this video and out of scope to my knowledge, therefore I will compare the stats of the guild member of the flexing chimps instead. Here it is. This is the weight leaderboard, comparing a Snither leaderboard and the Lappy Sheep. But as you can see, the weight of Lappy is significantly lower than Snither. But let's not care about that because they are calculated really differently. But the first thing is of course, number 1 Snither weight in flexing chimp, Theodore, has been pushed down to the 10th place. Meanwhile, Ice Stripey, a 4th place weight on Snither, has been pushed to first on Lappy Sheep. If we look at Theodore's stat, Theodore has a lot of skill overflow with over 3.3 billion alchemy XP. Meanwhile, Ice Stripey only has about 500 million alchemy XP, and with enough XP to get fishing 60 on top of that as well, and also 200 million lead on taming XP, and also 55 skill average. Meanwhile, Stripey is missing farming because he's farming 54 at the moment. So if we compare the skill weight of these two players on the two system, the result on Snither is that Theo has exactly 4,696 weight more than Stripey. That's about 20% different, but on Lappy Sheep, the difference have shrunk to 1,228, or about 11% difference. And if you compare the Slayer weight on Snither, these two players has about 100 weight difference, or about 2%. But on Lappy, the difference has increased to 500 weight, or about 5%. The reason for this is because Stripey has 1.4 million Enderman Slayer XP more than Theo, even though Theo has 10 million more Revenant XP and 2 million more Tarantula XP. So that is just to hammer down the point that Lappy overflow is calculated so little when compared to Snither weight. And that's why we can't really determine who's the best Skyward player is. The current number 1 weight player on Snither is currently Uber Pooper with over 40k weight. But is he truly the best? Well, yes, but that could also be other things that, let's say, Heart of the Mountain, maybe skill overflow, skill ranking, etc, etc. There's so many factors to Skyblock that cannot be measured in weight, like all the things that I have mentioned in the intro. And of course, the weight system has to have some sort of bias, due to lack of the knowledge of the game and also new meta, like how Revenant trading became a meta, making over 100 million Revenant XP possible overnight, and also the introduction of Master Mode Catacombs, which makes grinding Kata XP so much faster compared to F7. So in conclusion, weight system is a good way to track your progress in the game easily because it's just strings of numbers, not a whole fucking paragraph that anybody could analyze in 1 second. So in my opinion, don't take weight seriously. It's a good way to gauge how good you are at the game, but that doesn't mean you are better than someone because you have a higher weight than them. It's like an Osu PP system where one aspect is definitely weighted heavier than other, like how aim map is more rewarded than stream map or tech map in some instances. But that's just how competitive game works. There will always be a meta, and finding and exploring the said meta is part of being the best. But at the end of the day, that's just my opinion. And also, thank you to Lily and Snither themselves for sitting down and talking with me about the weight system. Please support them by either joining Lily's Discord server or check out Snither website. Thank you for watching to the end, and to the next blue moon. Farewell.